Hex Talks, a show that explores the world of horror through interviews with filmmakers, actors, writers, and some truly unique individuals. I am your host, Lawrie Brewster, and I am a horror filmmaker myself, with 7 feature films under my belt. Together, we're going to learn more about the world of independent film and the incredible influence that horror has had over the lives of some truly fascinating individuals. Hello there, and welcome to our latest episode of Hex Talks. Today, I am delighted to be joined by an up-and-coming young man, an exciting, talented filmmaker known as Raine McCormack, who has directed a number of short films and a feature film. His debut feature film is The Village in the Woods, and is available right now on Amazon and all major VOD digital platforms, and I think also has a physical release in the UK as well. So, Raine, welcome to Hex Talks, the penultimate moment before the glorious next stage of your ascendancy towards superstar and, cinema glory. Is it great?
Well, this is a brilliant intro. Thank you. I don't know how I can live up to this intro. Hello. Hi.
It's good. It's like your appointment with destiny, and so that has a spiritual profundity to it, which makes it all the more important.
And Destiny sat in an absolutely fantastic room, which is beautifully decorated.
Yes, thank you.
As I would expect.
It can make things a little bit awkward when you're running crowdfunding campaigns asking for help when you have gold leaf decorative plaster behind you. That was probably not the best idea in my pitch presentation video, but thankfully most folks overlooked that obvious ostentatious display of bourgeoisie wealth. But it's all fake, it's all just wood painted gold,
It's just one room, right?
Yeah, exactly. They can't see the potato sacks I've got outside that I have to sleep in.
Yeah.
The mountain of my own tears and the feces. It's a hard life in the world of independent film.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, I feel that. I understand.
So, Raine,
yeah,
to introduce you to the world, all these young Americans watching right now with giddy excitement, they see before them a filmmaker that isn't quite ordinary to the breed of filmmaker that we see. You're someone that has been pursuing film for about 10 years. You've been an artist pretty much all your life. And you're a little older than me, not much. But it's an extraordinary decision whenever anyone at a midpoint stage in their life decides to enter into an industry, the film industry, which is notoriously brutal and horrible. You normally have to be stupid when you're young to even dare enter it, but to be wise and do it voluntarily.
That's a really good question, isn't it? Yeah, it's desire, isn't it? It's like in a good story. You want something. I don't know if it's necessarily what you need as a character, but I think like film is an amazing medium. Just how it marries, the story, context of things in people's lives, and it teaches people so many things. Even if it's like the most darkest of horrors or thrillers, there's still a lesson to be learned from it. And I think I find that very, very appealing about film. It's a marrying. There's no other medium where it marries sound effect, music, the compositions.
And this connects with your various creative disciplines as well, because if you have to go on your IMDB, we see Raine McCormack, the director, but there's also Raine, the actor, he's a musician and a writer as well. So these were creative disciplines and interests you had. Is the culmination of all of these in your recent feature film, The Village in the Woods, is that the culmination then of all those different interests, just precisely because it's, as you described, the one medium that allows you to express all those creative perspectives, and disciplines in one project? Yeah,
I think you summarize it correctly, probably better than I was, actually. I think, yeah, you're right. It's kind of like all those interests come together. which is really nice. And I think for me, because you said to me, like, you know, you're later in life going into that. For me, I never really looked at the age thing or the numbers behind that. Because I know people who, you know, they're not particularly that happy, but they're in really, really stable careers, or they've got these stable families, but there's something missing there. And I think some of us have got to pursue something a bit crazy, you know. And film is, like you said, it's quite brutal, the film industry. It doesn't necessarily lay out a red carpet for you as you might think from the outside of it. It's frontline stuff, isn't it?
No, that's right.
It's grit and work, you know.
The film industry is like a gladiatorial arena in which most of its fighting participants are, you know, for better or worse, male and physically unhealthy. So it's a really disappointing gladiatorial arena to watch men fight to the death, all with BMIs that are too high and blood pressure problems.
That's true.
Hardly have entertained the Romans, you know.
Oh yeah, no, I know, right? Yeah, no, absolutely.
Your film, The Village in the Woods, and just to let all you guys know back home, The Village in the Woods is, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong here, Raine, because you'll be right, you'll know. But
I hope so.
To me, The Village in the Woods is a haunting folk horror-inspired tale with many interesting social and political allegorical references that connect with, I guess, aspects of ancient religion and paganism and spirituality as well. That's not to make the film sound like it's pretentious. It's not. It's quite grounded and down to earth, and it has a great creepy tale. And it's a really interesting visual expressions of that creepiness that they link to some of the finest folk horror films. I guess the lazy reference is often The Wicker Man, but it is true in the case of The Village in the Woods. So folks, if you are a fan of The Wicker Man like myself, then once you've watched this video and given it a like and a share and, you know, paid what you can towards my debts and fees, then
your decorating expenses.
Watch The Village in the Woods. So we can talk then, Raine, a bit about your journey to making that film. Sure. And it starts about 10 years before, right? And at least in terms of films, because, you know, looking at your IMDb, we have got short films, first of all. He's Gone, I Shall Visit, and The Souvenir. And then you're also acting and writing. Can you tell us a little bit about your work in film and how it led you to the Village in the Woods?
Oh, okay. So right from the very start of how I kind of started getting involved into that? I think actually, like on the actual film side, the actual production side, so to speak, obviously the first film that you mentioned there is He's Gone, which is a tale about a priest who seeks revenge for his son who's died, his son's committed suicide. And so he seeks revenge against the GP who wouldn't listen to his mental health issues. So he goes in with a handgun, as you always find in this kind of like crazy, really, the concept, but the idea, you know, behind it's strong. And we shot that one over one night. But what I'll say is that the launching pad for me to go into doing that was, as we were discussing off camera, was that that was upon the death of my father. So my father had passed away, and I decided that I really did want to do film. I really wanted to have a crack at this. So we shot that one over, it was only over one night. It was crazy. And I was actually acting in it as well. And it came across really well. It was really great learning experience. Then I moved on to doing the I Shall Visit, which is one that I actually self-shot with the help of one other chap on one of the days. And that's like a take on Whistle and I'll Come to Thee, my lad.
Okay, the M.R. James short story.
Yeah, the M.R. James, but it's set in a caravan on the coast. There's a guy who's going out beachcombing with his detector. So I shot that there. And then what I was doing was I was going around, basically around town with a screenplay which I had, which was called, it started out actually being called Brian the Blessed, which was a horror movie. And then it moved on, its title changed to being called The Blessed. I did a small crowdfund for it, but only at the time only managed to raise, I think it was about 2,500, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that wasn't enough at all to go and make this feature film. But I was determined to try and get this film made.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just kept approaching people, approaching, but it never really took. And then there was a moment, a pivotal moment, which was in, it was actually around July, August time, 2015, where I was like, right, that's it. I've just absolutely had enough. There was just so much rejection all the time. There was the same old story that everybody hears, which is like, we haven't done one before. And so it's like, right, I'm going to do one. That's it. I'm going to make a feature film, which is, and I just took the ball by the horns, wrote this screenplay, which was originally called Harbour, which was going for the Robert Rodriguez style. It was using everything that was around me.
Yeah,
so we don't live there anymore, but in the village we lived in, there was this pub, which you see on the cover there, which was next door to me. And obviously there was woods near there. So I thought, right, I'll write everything about this. And so I wrote that centered around that. And then the screenplay got handed over to a chap who was an actor friend of Sidney Keane, who's in the film, who plays the guy up in the top of the pub. And he passed it on. And then that's when people like Richard Hope got involved, and Therese Bradley, who's Scottish. And so all these other people came into it. And then suddenly, so it was like October 2015 was when this pre-production was happening for what is now The Village in the Woods. And then it was February 2016 that I was on set in that village. So it was a really big sort of like turn. It was like suddenly it went from that to that, like, more or less just clicked over.
So yeah, and sorry, you said what year did you say you filmed again, Raine?
So I shot in, so I did 2016, which was winter 2016, so that's February. And then I went back and obviously the pub was outside, but we went 2017, we shot again in 2017. We did another, I think it was 7 days of shooting. And even then, to be honest with you, I went and did 1 day with Richard Hope in 2018 in a studio in Bristol. And then the film, obviously, as you know, it came out in 2019. So that was a journey of it.
It's a labour of love then, really, as well. But also a labour of pragmatism as well, working with the available resources that you have. For example, because the story is centred around a couple that have, or perhaps have not, as mysterious inheritance of a disused hotel with a bar. So this was an available location. You were working within the resources you had at your disposal. And Richard Hope, who is an actor in The Village in the Woods, is really exceptional. He's a great character actor.
He's great.
He brings a real a gravitas and a great energy to that film. So you have lots going on in your life whilst you're trying to make this film, because of course, you'd have liked to just get finished in 6 months, the whole thing, or 9 months.
Yeah, of course.
What were the kind of challenges that caused for production to take place over that course of time? Real life, was it basically real life just deciding, no, Raine, we're going to fuck around with you a little bit?
Well, I mean, the first thing is obviously, it's a learning curve. So it was a great film school in that regards. But one of the things is that I hadn't actually cut a feature film before. And so I'd sat down with this feature film and I started cutting through terabytes of footage. And it just got to the point, because the film actually in 2016, the film that I had is a little bit different to the film you see now. It's got a different ending. The actual dream sequence, I'm not going to give too much away because no one's seen it, but the actual dream sequence that you see in the middle was actually the third act on the original one. And actually I had it really pained me. And I think like maybe you can understand what I'm saying here. There was a 10-minute sequence which I had in it, which is part of that footage which you see in that dream sequence. And that's the possession of her. And it takes it from one side of the pub at the top going across to where you see her when she collects up in the dream. The headdress.
So effectively then you had this ending, but you decided, you know what, I think we could do an even better ending. So you want to kind of, that's my producer instinct.
Yeah, of course.
If we have more naked guys on fire, then it's going to be even more epic. It's so great in Venezuela.
You know what? It's one of those things when you learn, and it's great to make those mistakes because you've got to make those mistakes. You've got to learn. You've got to learn about what works, what doesn't work, and sometimes you are learning that on the job. You're going to, and there was just production errors that happened in 2016.
Okay,
they're pure production errors where when you sit in the cut of it, just something just doesn't make sense, and you can't make it an ambiguous thing. You can't just have a Deus Ex Machina moment just suddenly happen from nowhere to make it make sense. And the film in itself,
I've made my whole career doing that, Raine. Though I mean, that's my secret. We're giving it all.
But the film in itself was really quite ambiguous in its tone in 2016. And I did some test screening with it, and it was coming back from people that they weren't really sure of certain like why certain things were happening. And there was bits that I could like let through, and it'd be like, okay, that's fine. But I just thought, I've just got to go back and pick up some stuff on here. And there were just, as I said, there was just some production errors in 2016 which happened. But bear in mind, by the time we got to 2017, there was none. It was like a well-oiled machine, because we understood that. We'd been through that,
And this was your first feature as well. And,
it was,
And you wanted to use it to learn how to make a technically consistent professional commercial feature film. So, why leave 40% of it with mistakes if the whole point of the project is to get to that end result, which is to say this is a good commercial genre film that is technically fine.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree, and I think like I was of the mind. You've got to remember, like I said, that I'd been shopping around the project beforehand, and everybody had just been kind of like turning the cheek to it and not really saying that they would support that because you'd not done one before. So having the opportunity to actually make one, just wasn't. This is my personality. I wasn't going to let go of that. I was going to see that thing through, no matter what, hell or high water. I was going to see that film through and see it through to distribution. And, by the end of this year, we've got it out into 13 countries. And that's with physical releases in those countries as well, with Blu-ray. It's had, I think it's late this year, it's going to have a theatrical in Malaysia and Brunei, which is great. And, it's sold to Russia. It's gone everywhere, which is great. But it shows you really that timeline. Because when I first did it, I was thinking, why is this guy disappearing? Like you look at the filmmakers at the start and you think, well, they just disappear. But when you're actually doing it, it's like 5 years now, it's nothing. There's nothing really, especially when you're small and you're on your own.
Did it feel like time flew then whilst you were trying to get the film made, or did it feel like a grind sometimes where you felt like it just would never end?
I think in 2016, it was a little bit of a slap round the face. The thing, it smarts a bit. It just wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be. And it was incredibly exhausting, as it is for every filmmaker, to make something. A bit more in control in 2017, so time was kind of like ticking along better there. But I think, and I think you'll know this as well, right? That when you're focused on completing something, the world's just kind of carrying on. And you're sort of just focused in, and you don't really notice the time as much as maybe you should.
I think one of the fun experiences I guess you'll have endured is how everyone else's life seemed to carry on as normal, whilst you're holding the baby of the film, you know.
Well, this is a thing, right? So Beth Park, who plays Nikki in the movie, she obviously she had to come back in 2017, do some more pickup work, and well, pickups, like there were some actual big scenes that she reshot. But I think it was it 2018? I can't exactly remember. It was 2018, but she became pregnant herself. So, I mean, it was lucky that actually we'd really just pulled the trigger on it.
Silver fox, Raine, honestly. Oh, sorry, my mistake. I mean, it goes on the crew, right? Not the cast, you know.
You know what? In the context of the movie, yeah. I must add in, this is via her husband. So,
wow.
But it just goes to show you that if say for example we'd gone back to do this in early 2019 or late 2018 to go and pick up stuff, well then we would have been buggered, because obviously, you know, things had changed quite a bit. So I think we really kind of like got lucky, but the time element of it was a long time to, when I look back at it in hindsight, I would not have changed it because of the fact of that I would have just proceeded and wanted to finish it. But looking back in hindsight, I think, God, man, that is a long time. You know, it's a chunk of your life there that you've dedicated into that.
Absolutely, yeah. To create this work of art, which is what a film is, and in terms of post-production, did you find that a very difficult lesson in how not to commit suicide, you know, because that's what most filmmakers find post-production to be.
I found it in 2016 because I was basically, want for a better word, left with a bag full of drives, a lot of footage, and no previous experience in actually cutting a feature. I found it very difficult in the respect of that everything seems to come through the film industry via other people. And if you don't know other people directly who you want to work with or, you know, want to reach, it can be really, really tough. And I found that tough in 2016. In 2017, when we, must give a shout out to these guys, actually, they called Yurt ADR. So we had some guys who turned up to one of the sets in 2017, Max and Milos, and they have a business where they do ADR on set, which was great. They set up an acoustic tent, and they're brilliant. They're really, really good at what they do. And it was actually him.
Raine, are they doing sound effects for like Foley sound?
No. So basically, I knew that we needed to have the ADR because there was a massive mistake which happened in 2016, that there was a generator involved in the distance. But we were also, you remember, we were shooting next to a main busy road on that where that pub is. That is a main through road. So we needed ADR. And in 2017, they turned up, they did the additional dialogue recording. So I already had a cut which had inserts in it, which were actual storyboard art to show how it would work through the sequence. And so when the actors were on set, they went in and they actually did their ADR on set, which was great. That enabled us to do that. But what was really good as well through that process is that Max, bless him, he was the guy who actually, I think he just thought, you know what, you know, Raine's really like pushing to try and finish this and get this done properly. I'll link him into some people. And that was key for post, because he linked us into a guy called Alan Daniels, whose father, Graham Daniel, mixed for Kubrick. So the sound mix came from those guys. Then linked us into Oral Otti, who did some, Oral didn't do a full cut on the movie, but he did another cut after the fact. He went through and snipped through, and Oral was a guy who cut Game of Thrones. So that was really, really good. That was the blessing. I'd say that to anybody getting involved in this. That network situation is really key to that.
I mean, and those are those are great sounding guys.
Yeah, they are.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, though, it's not that your film had enormous resources either.
No.
So you were getting folks involved, and they were recommending other folks to help you.
Yeah.
So they must have seen a lot of, well, earnestness and passion in you for the project.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that they understood that, you know, that it's like you said early on at the start of this, that it's an incredibly tough industry. And even just to get your film sold, if you want to go a traditional route, you know, if you don't want to self-distribute, which is another tough part of this, can be quite difficult as well, getting people to actually watch it, to turn up. I mean, I famously remember this one sales agent saying to us, you know, he said, well, you want to put on a screener in Soho of the movie? And we were like, okay, will you turn up? No. I was like, well, you know, I mean, how are you meant to go forward? Now, by hook or by crook, we did. And we just didn't give up. And it's the same old story. And it sounds so cliche when you say it, but you really do learn that, right? That it's by not giving up. You've got to have that perseverance. Just keep turning up, keep knocking on some doors. If that's what you know, because I know that you guys, you take a self-distribution route, which I fully respect, because it's really, really tough thing to do.
Oh, I mean, like with Hex, I mean, you know, after the success of my OnlyFans at the Cannes restroom, it was, you know, a whole new form of distribution that opened up so many physical doors, made life quite uncomfortable for a while.
Physical doors, yeah. Which restroom was this, Lawrie?
There's so many restrooms at the Palais. You know,
is this the Palais? Because not the one down the bottom of the escalators. That's a busy restroom.
It's my haunt, you know. All my fans were there. And yeah, I mean, for us, well, we do. So Hex self-distributes. I mean, to be honest, Hex there was a time, you know, when we were actually distributing over 100 titles. So we set up as a distributor.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Sorry, yeah, okay, interesting.
That's because they were all so terrible we couldn't put the Hex branding on them. It was an experiment.
Okay. So you were putting out other people's titles, right? You were basically going out there and finding stuff to put out.
Yeah, that makes it sound more responsible and grand and focused than it really was. More like cynical aggregation and experimenting, but with loose terms. And these were films that had already been out for a little while. So we weren't taking folks' fresh hopes and dreams and dashing them like a normal distributor does. Yeah. But so, like, you know, we did that, and then we do our special editions, which we distribute. And we distribute some other folks' films on physical as well. But for digital, we actually do like what you did yourself. You know, you work with other distributors for getting them on VOD and then physical retail, like in supermarkets and stuff like that. So we do our own for the special editions, but we actually work quite conventionally with the other channels, like what you did with the Village in the Woods.
Okay, got you.
And sometimes you make so much money from distribution, you could just cry.
It's hard game. It's hard game.
So in terms of the folks that came to appreciate the obvious passion and earnestness you had for your project and were recommending other industry veterans to help you with your film as well, do you feel that that was something that came about because of your own life experience, your emotional maturity, that, you know, because you've experienced things? And I'm thinking this in relation to what the experience might be like, or how it might be different for, you know, filmmakers in their early 20s, you know, folks that are watching this that are just like, because it's harder to get taken more seriously when you're, you know, young. And that's because, you know, most young folk are just idiots. Like, you know, most of the audience of this show, fools, imbeciles. You know, what do you do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So Yeah, what's the question?
It's just a perverse statement, you know?
I didn't hear the question mark at the end.
Yeah, just a cruel statement, you know,
just this sort of hatred
a horrible
of youth.
proclamation about young people that just left the dot.
This only happens in your 40s. As I said,
So,
next up's the knees.
So do you feel then that you had benefits from approaching film in starting from your 30s? And for me, I mean, I didn't start film right away either. I got into film like from about 27, started doing corporate videos and then commercials, and then from about 30 to 40 now, that was my dedicated career as a film guy.
Yeah.
And that's 10 years. That's similar to yourself as well. Do you feel that made you a better filmmaker, that success can come in whatever form you see it, whether it's spiritual, emotional, or commercial, because you have that maturity? Or do you wish, or do you think you could have done this at 20 and be at the same place you are now at 30? Say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have done this. I mean, it's so easy, right? In hindsight, I couldn't have done this at 20, to be honest with you. And I was playing in bands. My focus wasn't like that at all. I think, I mean, if we lay it on the line, really, I think I'll speak from my own personal experience. And maybe that there's some small grain of wisdom in there somewhere. But I kind of feel that many people, and me included, entirely me included in this, is that we kind of get a little bit sometimes knocked by our own insecurities about things. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I never thought that it was a serious proposition to actually go and make a film. Because maybe I was a little bit concerned about the fact that I might be a bit crap at it, or that I might not, you know, I suppose it's all these insecurities around failure. These are really like sort of cliched used things that people talk about all the time. But to be honest with you, when you're in the front line of doing something, they're actually really bloody real things. Like you can feel like incredibly, you can let that insecurity take over. It can be incredibly subtle. In fact, nobody can even tell that you've got that going on. But I think that when you actually cue into actually knowing yourself a bit better, which I think is what you're talking about with maturity, which I've come across some 20-year-olds, to be honest with you, who know themselves better than me right now, the way I am now. Yeah. So I think they've just got that about them. But I think like all of them commonly have this thing where they can take grip and hold of that sort of insecurity they've got and just push forward relentless, regardless of it. Because I think everybody's got it. But I think that some of us just listen to it a little bit too much. And so therefore we slow it down. And I think that was my example of coming into doing film, was that underneath that not being able to do it was just purely insecurity. When I look at it in hindsight, looking back at it, it's like, well, that's what it is. It's a concern of being judged, you know?
So your advice then for young filmmakers in their like, you know, late teens, early 20s,
yeah,
would be to just persevere and go with it then? Absolutely,
100%, because carry on regardless. It really doesn't matter. I think like we put a lot of I think in our modern times currently, I don't want to sound like an old crooner here, but we put a lot of focus on the idea that you've got to hit this, you've got to be successful like this, you've got to be this, you've got to be that. The majority of it's just bullshit. The whole thing's just bullshit. The main key thing is, I think within all of that, is that you've got to know yourself. If you're going to be a writer-director, as an example, if you don't necessarily know yourself very well, you're not going to write. Well, you're going to write about yourself. This is one of the rules here. I know this to be true, and I'm sure this is 100% true. No matter, even if you think you're not writing about you, you are. There's something there about you. So I feel it's better to know yourself within that process. So when you are writing, you know what you're accessing because you're drawing from things within yourself. And they might be fantastical and massive in your film idea, but you are key drawing from you. And I think like, if you know yourself, if you're prepared to just not be concerned or judge yourself in the regards that, yeah, maybe I am insecure about this. Maybe I worry too much that people are going to judge me. Maybe, you know, blah, 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 all these things that go on in our heads, but just carry on regardless. I think that, I think that's key. I think that's kind of like the magic to it, because as soon as you go, I'm going, you'd be amazed at how many people will go with you. But I think it's when you falter back and you go like, oh, you hesitate. Everyone hesitates and it doesn't work. I think that's really key when you're going for these projects.
Wow, Raine, embracing insecurity. You know, it's going to make a lot of 15-year-olds watching this really uncomfortable about their emo poetry that they've written. They always have the disclaimer for their parents and friends. This isn't how I feel or me. This is just a poem about a guy who's crying because he struggles to masturbate properly. You know, so, okay, sure, it's not you. It's not me. Embrace the insecurity. Live the dream.
Well, I think it's completely there. I think like even when I look at some of the movies which I generally wouldn't watch myself, like you know, big tentpole movies, often I won't bother with those tentpoles. But even if I have sat and watched one, you can see the writer in it. You've got to, because it's human emotion. We're talking about human beings and the process of being a human being, no matter how fantastical it is. So you will always write that in there. So what I'm trying to say is, to anybody who's younger, don't listen to that bullshit in your head, which is saying, oh, you can't, oh no, I'm going to be judged. Gives a fuck. Just do it. And carry on regardless.
Yep. No, I think it's carry on. Yeah, not to listen to that voice of judgment. Unless it's coming from me, guys, because that's the one thing.
Well, you are destiny, as you said.
Yeah. If you find embracing your insecurity too difficult, you can instead embrace your megalomaniacal narcissism, and you know, you'll turn out like me. So that's also a warning.
Oh, wow, man, these are big words now.
With terrifying consequences.
True though.
So your film is on release, and as we talked before, it's a folk horror movie with I think great throwback impressions of classic kinds of folk horror films. Very typical to the British folk horror genre scene. I've always enjoyed those kinds of films, from The Wicker Man, The Witchfinder General, and it's great to see the spirit of those films being reinvented, and because you know they had such ties to cultural, spiritual, social, political ideas.
Of course.
And oftentimes they could talk about these things without being too heavy-handed as well, which is important, because you know it's good to tease your audience with ideas and with your allegories and commentaries without just hitting them on the head. And I felt like The Village in the Woods did that quite elegantly.
It was sort of subtle delivery of I wanted to do something that was atmospheric ultimately. So it was, like you said, it was rightly what you just said there. It was drawing actually from the tone of that era. So there wasn't necessarily any specific, I mean, there's obvious kind of references there when you think about like Wicker Man and even saying Rosemary's Baby. You know, there's this idea there. But to be honest with you, I wasn't really looking at those films when we were putting it together. It was more just my impression of it that I felt from that era. And I felt like in that era, like you said, they really did center on atmosphere and that sort of tone, where there was like a feeling of dread underneath the surface of it. I felt like that's what I wanted to portray within it. And I think a lot of people have picked up on that, like that, you know, the people who do really like the film, it's the atmosphere of it that they like.
Yes, I would I would totally agree with that, and recommend Village in the Woods as well to anyone watching this for that reason, because it's not easy to produce an independent genre film that so effectively conjures an unusual atmosphere, something that's just a little bit different. And you know, that film did that, and it does draw you in. It keeps you watching. And also, you know, you're saying about your inspirations for your film from classic genre cinema, folk horror, and with Rosemary's Babies, you know, occult horror as well. I liked how you expressed those inspirations, because to me it was almost like, it was obvious that you had a very intellectual approach, but at the same time it didn't fetishize those films. It was like you were painting in broad strokes, like an impressionist, you know.
Absolutely, yeah, of course, yeah. My impression of it, yeah.
I think at the moment there is artifice is a heavy commodity in supposedly pretentious genre films, and it often deals with the fetishization of previous work and popular kind of genres and or subgenres within horror. I'm not mentioning A24's marketing techniques or
yeah, of course.
You know, but you know, those things can be used to sell films as if they're like a kind of artisanal coffee brand, you know.
Yeah, you're right.
Whereas Village in the Woods, it does what it says and sets out to do, but without any airs and graces, or you know, without any pretentiousness. You know, there's an intellectual honesty to the film and a kind of artistic authenticity. And it's not to say that I'm bitching on A24 that all their films don't have that, but their marketing, in my opinion, does distort what authenticities the films do sometimes have, because they're often selling them as a kind of a film that if you see you like, you're smarter. You know, they don't invite you to think; they just invite you to feel you're smarter for simply.
Of course, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, but your film, it leaves a lot of space for folks to think and experience. Could you perhaps tell us a little bit then more about the themes, again, without giving any spoilers, because we want people to watch The Village in the Woods, but some of the themes that you were exploring?
Yeah, of course. Well, obviously isolation, which there was an article which went out. So I didn't know about like some of the press that happened on it. David Barnett, writing for The Independent, did a piece about, I don't know if you've seen this piece, it's about folk horror. It's about the ambiguous, I can't remember the actual title about it, but it's about the ambiguous nature of folk horror. And he did an article, and actually The Village in the Woods was like, he wrote about The Village in the Woods in the article as well, which was ace.
Well, but that's fantastic, because Independent's a major newspaper, and then to be
totally
editorial for that, it's great and a big achievement for an independent film.
Yeah, no, but yeah, it was great. I just actually the night when I found that, I'd done a Google search. I was just doing, you know, Village in the Woods Google search latest, and then Independent came. I was like, whoa, what's this? It was behind a paywall though, which was really disappointing. But you could do it with a free trial thing. But yeah, he said a study in isolation, which is what he thought, and I felt like he was correct as well, as obviously because these characters are drawn in. I'm going to start this again. I'm going to go from the top of this again. Is that
okay? Right. I'll make myself comfortable. Yep.
Theme-wise, The Village in the Woods and theme-wise. So yeah, David Barnett, he had said study in isolation, The Village in the Woods in The Independent. And it's about the rich versus the poor. That's essentially what the message of the story is within there. It's about the rich luring in less fortunate people, you know, with a promise of easy money, which is clearly a line there that's inside the film itself. And it's so that they can sustain themselves. It's people being coaxed in by an idea. It's like the 5 minute of fame idea. It's the fact that if we get that, brilliant, our life will be sorted, everything will be resolved for us, all our problems will be over. When actually, not really, you're just fodder for the rich guy. And it's not actually your vision, it's their vision. And it's those sort of themes that are playing through it. Like with Maddie, who is played by Therese Bradley, when they said to me, what do you want her hair to look like? And I said, well, I just want it to look like Margaret Thatcher has been out partying. I want that morning after. And it was that reference to that, actually. It's the whole idea that she was meant to be like that. Some people have picked up on that. I think
Yeah,
it's kind of,
I mean, she was great as well.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, absolutely
she
fantastic.
definitely, Margaret Thatcher being a famous right-wing English Prime Minister for the UK with a formidable reputation. And yeah, she does have that energy. She was also her character was quite foxy as well, or is that just my perverse
absolutely
fetish?
no
Was there sexuality there?
Yeah, of course, because within the film, like, you know, the rich versus the poor kind of concept is also that you've got things that we see all the time, and this has been going on for ages, but you see that sort of sexuality is something that's used quite a lot to sell products. It's used to get people ahead, and her character embodies that power position. It's sort of somebody who, you know, she's only offering small things to them, but they just got this great dream that their life is going to be better for this. But it's not. It's heading to the same place or even worse than it was prior to it. So, you know, that there is that sort of undertone in it, right? Of sort of implied sort of sexuality in there as well. It's just running through it.
No, it's great. It's and also, like, so folks have an idea, these characters that are formidable and intimidating and at the same time very pleasant and at times darkly charismatic are the villagers who come to visit, our two heroes who have inherited their pub and are trying to fit in, or maybe not fit in, with their strange neighbors. In some ways it feels a bit like, and then I don't want to mischaracterize your film by saying this. When I say like a piece of theater, I mean that in the very positive way. A bit like, try to remember the name. It has the kind of the slight unease of like Abigail's Party. Is that right? I think
absolutely.
Yeah, like that kind of vibe. Although there's plenty of action, folks, taking place outside this hotel. It's not a film that just takes place in one location like Rope, Alfred Hitchcock, or anything like that.
Yeah, you're right though. The theatrical idea is another sort of thematic vibe that's in it. That's all that is, really. It's the fact that all these things that these people desire, it's just part of theatre, isn't it? It's, you know, it's there's a smoke screen hiding intentions, but the smoke screen's pretty obvious if you take a look. It's kind of like there's these things going on through it. So there's these sort of thematic layers. That's what I tried. I mean, I attempted it, you know, and put it across that way.
These are clearly ideas that interest you and have motivated you to create this film, this artwork. But there are, for a lot of filmmakers, genre filmmakers as well, you know, they want to produce films that are inspired or seek to emulate the feelings they had when they experienced horror pop culture for the first time. For example, they might watch The Evil Dead and they dream of making their own zombie demon film. Or I say Evil Dead, I mean, it'd be great if they did. It's not normally Evil Dead. Or they want to ingratiate themselves in the very online-based so-called hashtag horror community and being part of that kind of system of festivals, Twitter tags, and whatnot. If that sounds like I'm suggesting it might be superficial.
Well, I suppose there is that, isn't there, to certain elements of this.
And I call it superficial. Now I'm about to say, so how important is superficiality to Raine McCormack?
It's not important at all. Commenting on it, maybe. But I always think, like, you know, I think this is another thing that I really like about the medium of film, is that you can make comments on things, and you can be on the nose or completely ambiguous to it. But I think it's a really good place to make those comments. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of superficial. There's it's sort of like the place we're in right now, isn't it? With you know, social media is great because people can obviously connect, but there's also a bewildering pressure that's come from it. And I think most people that I know, or maybe don't know, but I'm connected to them on social media, they don't have any intention of being superficial by any means. I think it's just what the platforms demand of them. That because you're just competing to sort of for this prize, which is kind of like in the village in the woods. It's kind of like you're competing for practically nothing. You know, there's nothing to be gained. Maybe you get some relations from that, you know, and some friendships, hopefully. But ultimately, it's vacuous, isn't it? You're just throwing something out into the ether.
I think one of the biggest challenges for independent filmmakers is, in respects to superficiality, is not always their own superficiality, but the drive for so many folks that want to have careers in the entertainment world that, you know, will find any reason to try and create clickbait and fuel a kind of cycle of abusive publicity nonsense that forces filmmakers to be a part of that system or not. And it has its own pitfalls as well, as we've seen from filmmakers that are hot one day, cancelled the next, and it's a real minefield on social media.
Yeah.
But of course, filmmakers want to be visible. They want their work to be seen. But more and more, they're having to work with folks that are having to take bigger chances, that are looking for bigger shortcuts to success, which is, of course, a theme as well for your two main characters as well.
That's it.
Seem
Yeah.
to have, you know, hope on a plate. I think it's good what you're espousing, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you talk about creating art for your own sake and still having commercial aspirations, you know, getting your film out there.
Yeah, of course, that's important.
I think the mischaracterization that a lot of independent filmmakers can have is that they only exist in the commercial sphere if, you know, they know the right people on Twitter. Whereas in, you know, grown-up land, it's when you cut deals that get your movies distributed and you can start funding more films and paying bills.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're completely right. And there is this, I think there is a bit of a misconception about this, like that people, I guess when they start, I mean, to be honest with you, and we both know this, right? When you start going, it's not that long, about a couple of years in, when you start to realize what a slog it's going to be. You know, unless you've got those, you know, the nepotistic connections. Is nepotistic a word?
Yeah,
is that correct? Yeah, it is a word in that way. So unless you're fortunate in that area, which, let's be honest, again, it's kind of like 10%, but it does dominate quite a large top part of this industry. So yeah, there's like the reality of it, and then there's this idea of what it should be, and it's never like that. I mean, oh my God, like just the sort of thing when you have a meeting with somebody, like everybody just thinks that it's nothing like what people think it is. It never goes exactly the way that you think it's going to go either when you're there. You know, everything is kind of like, I think it was Alec Baldwin. There was a did you ever see that documentary, which is about, he went to Cannes with a guy. The guy, I don't know about the director guy, because I don't think he's had very good press, the guy who was, but I can't remember the name. But anyway, he said a very good thing, Alec Baldwin. He said, it's a bit like Kung Fu. It's like whoever can do the best sort of move can continue on. And it kind of felt like that. And I understand that, because you are constantly having to be very organic about it and move and ebb and flow through that to get your own projects going. It's not like it just happens and that's it. You do one and you're off. I don't think it works that way. And I think there is that perception that people have sometimes, is that it's easier than it actually looks. It's not. I don't want to damp squib it, because that's tough, just damp squib it that way.
It's basically the least effective way to make money, and the most effective way to incur depression and obesity. So these are those are the three wonderful aspects you can bring to your life by pursuing a career in film. But then, you know what? It's a compulsion for most folks. You know, they pursue art because they've tried everything else, because everything else would be, in many respects, easier than trying to sustain a livelihood doing the creation of artworks. Can I ask, Raine, so your short films led you to The Village in the Woods.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of the film. I think it's great. So
thanks, appreciate that.
No, it's just
I'll give you. How much was that?
So that restroom and the Pally, you know, I need a tag team effort for next year's.
Oh my God!
You need that budget for the next movie too. You can click the link to the OnlyFans video preview in the description below. So, Raine, have you begun? You'll have sketched out some ideas for your next film, right? And I know you can't go into any details, but how is things looking for your next project? Are you just coming up with ideas, or do you have anything in the works? Or
no, absolutely, looking very good. I've got two features which are my own writing, that I'm pushing forward with. They're going into their various forms of drafts now, so pushing forward on that. And I've got a really exciting project that's come up, which is part of a very big company who have sort of where I'm collaborating with them to bring one of their visions to the screen, which is really cool. I can't say too much about it at the moment because it's all in that process.
The McDonald's.
Oh, absolutely.
It'd be so rubbish if it was. It would just be like, yeah, man, it's fucking McDonald's. It's hard, but we're still going to make it good. Still going to be artistic. Yeah. Ronnie's going to have a really interesting angle.
Oh, well, Ronnie's gone, man. Ronnie's gone. Yeah, that didn't work out for Ronald. He was bad, wasn't he? But
the Tail group, you know, that as well. You know, it just.
No, I've got projects on the go. I mean, to be honest with you, you know, The Village in the Woods came out in 2019, and there were a couple of things that I got sort of offered, with lower budget things, but that I didn't want to do, because I just didn't like the scripts, to be honest. Like, I just
fair enough, because you're a writer as well. I mean, you've got your own voice,
exactly, you know? Exactly. And then there was things that I had, but that I just shelved in the end, because I just didn't think that it was just what I wanted to do for that second film. But I'm getting to that point now where I've got these two projects which are very strong. One is in the dark thriller horror vein. The other one is more in a sort of crime thriller sort of area. But they're all going to be quite dark, to be honest with you. That sort of vibe to them. But yeah, there wasn't anything that I particularly, it might sound a bit like boring, but there wasn't just anything I wanted to make. Like, it was just that sort of point, you know. So 3 years ago, maybe I could have pushed forward to do one of these other projects I had myself, but I just didn't feel like I really, really wanted to make it, you know?
Yeah, you know, there's some maybe younger filmmakers listening to that, and they might for a second think like, oh, that's a bit self-indulgent. But remember, guys, making a film is a massive part of your life.
Yeah, it is.
It's a year if you've got, it could be a year if you've got all the cash in place, you don't need to worry. And if you're having to kind of make shit happen, then it can take more than that, take 2 years or you know, and you don't get that time back. It's why I often wonder how some folks can just do purely commercial I mean, just, you know, it's like, or not even a lot of commercial cinema I love actually,
I
but
mean, like the payday sort of films, basically.
yeah, it's just it's a year of your life, and it's like, well, why? Like, you know,
if
surely,
not more,
yeah.
right? I mean,
So you're right to take the time to make sure that it's something you're passionate about, because film demands a lot from your life.
it does, and when you have a film go out there and then go out internationally as well, it's sort of like I don't know if it's like, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but before it actually goes out, you know, that was my first film. I don't think you actually realize how far that goes. You don't compute in your head the reach that happens.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's also that to be said about it, because I think that every time you put out something, you're kind of making a statement about something, right? So, like, I think that you should make sure that the statement that you want to make is something that you kind of believe in to some degree. I know that can change over the time that you're making
because
something.
it's a statement about you as an artist.
Well, I think it is, but I also think that, do you think that's maybe a bit indulgent? Do you think that that's not really?
I think, I guess like, when I say a statement about the artist, it's a bit like if you just make shit and you're quite cynical about making shit, and then it's harder for fans to be passionate about. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, the famous Selling Out, for example.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like if I just started, I don't know, if I just started making like Hellraiser 7 or something, and that or or whatever, you know,
or Meg 3.
Yeah, it would be like what's going on with Lawrie, man? Is he like?
Yeah, but his decorating has gone.
Yeah, it's true. You know, those gold and ivory pyramids aren't going to pay for themselves.
That's gold leaf now.
Yeah, so yeah, you have to have some real passion, you know, especially at the independent film level. Like, not having passion for your independent film is like, it's like having sex with someone that has no orifices. You know, it's just a really uncomfortable, disappointing, and strange, slippery experience. You know, and you can go at it for as long as you want, but you're not going to accomplish anything special. That's
clearly a very handy situation to be in.
Yeah, well, it would be, yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting segment. You're incorrigible, Raine.
These analogies are like, you know,
you know, you were saying about the thrillers, and some of my favorite dark thrillers are almost horror films, or could be argued to have horror strong elements anyway.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. From sometimes it could be like from giallo type films, especially some of the earlier ones, you know, where they had more of the kind of that crime films such as like the bird with the crystal plumage, you know, and things like that, of earlier Dario Argento films. But you could even look at films like David Fincher's Seven and argue a great case for. So, and that's one of the wonderful things about horror that we love as well, is that it is a broad church, you know, and that you can. So yeah, I look forward to those. And do you feel that you'll bring horror elements to those films at all?
Yeah, definitely.
In spirit?
Yeah, oh, totally. I mean, if I was to say, like, the films, like, if you take a film like, I'm thinking about Ending Things, Charlie Kaufman's movie. I mean, that to me is like a horror. It's disjointed, it's disturbing, it's sad. You know, it's very sad what it's actually talking about. It's a guy who's obviously going through a mental health problem, physical mental health problem. And yeah, like you said, there's horror in almost everything. Like you said, David Fincher. Well, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, his remake of that. That's definitely got horror tones to it. It's got the darkness of that horrible scene with Elizabeth Is that how you pronounce the name in that? Elizabeth, is it? It's not
Yeah, I think
Elizabeth,
so.
is it? It's Elizabeth. Or
They'll let us
Lisbeth.
know in the comments. I can already sense
Yeah,
it.
all right. Sorry for butchering it. Brilliant movie. Great remake. I thought it was a great remake. That's very horror driven. I think Fincher definitely has this leaning into this sort of horror tone in a lot of his work. You look at Fight Club. It's a great comedy. It's got some great moments in it. It's also got a horror element to it because you've got the horror element of actually the guy's talking to a version of himself. I mean, all these things. I think as soon as we go down the road of psychological, or go down the road of those sort of disturbances, inner disturbances, that's horror.
No,
And
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, I think some of the things, one of the problems that I think personally in film, especially in film distribution, is that genres, I know why they're there and I know why it exists. Horror, thriller, drama, some of them are just crazy, like drama, horror, thriller, you get this whole list. But essentially it's just because there's so much content that it's a great way to say over there, you might find stuff that's scary, or over here. But then you get films, which I think like The Village in the Woods does, which it kind of sits in the middle on it. So it kind of plays on atmosphere. It doesn't play on blood or gore or anything like that. And there's lots of these movies out there, and they kind of get pushed into a genre, just like a bucket genre. And I think it would be really great if we had some different terms for different genres that people could understand. Maybe add in another 10 genres into these different genres that people openly knew about, that places like IMDB used as terms. So maybe like in a thriller, if it's a really dark thriller pushing towards horror, what about chiller? It's a chilling thriller. Like there's these different things.
Yeah.
And I know that people use these terms together, but you never see them out there in mainstream distribution. And I think it's a shame for some of these titles, because I think some titles just get swamped and don't find audiences. Of course, they're all different genres.
No, of course, and oftentimes genres can become distorted by by popular trends in distribution and in marketing, so that they actually put off people that would otherwise like a lot of films that aren't part of the trend but are within that genre. For example, when horror was characterized as torture porn in the 90s, it put off a lot of people that would otherwise have liked maybe independent gothic horror films that were being made, or psychological horror films and things like that as well. So yeah, you're right. Having more genres or a different perspective on it would help. My cousin Michael tells me there's a lot of genres in pornography, which have helped to create many, many subgenres and diversification of media and content in that realm. That would be interesting to take a feather in the cap for mainstream cinema. My cousin Michael is a source of many interesting and curious factoids, Raine. If you need his number.
I really like the way that cousin Michael takes a rap for this as well. This is Michael, who
his rap sheet is long and long.
My cousin Michael is brilliant. It's brilliant.
He's very comfortable under other people's beds. He's a great guy.
My concern is that my cousin Michael is your alter ego.
Oh God, that's my concern as well.
Oh, so, you talk about people under beds. Talking about a film, we're talking about genres here and like horror and going down into the thriller side. Have you seen a Spanish film called Sleep Tight?
I haven't, no.
It's about a concierge guy who is breaking into a woman's apartment every night.
Oh,
it's it's an absolutely fantastic movie. It's completely creepy. It's very horror, but it's branded as thriller.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's really dark and sinister, and it's like creeps you out. And the ending, brilliant. You're going to really like this film, I'm sure. But it doesn't. I don't know if it's necessarily reached an audience that it could really do really well with. So Sleep Tight. That's a good one. Spanish film.
Recommendation. So yeah. the success then of The Village in the Woods is opening some doors for you. Yeah. Hard earned, hard fought for, and that's exciting. But it'll also place you in this interesting position there where you'll, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but facing a decision about where to invest your energies more in respects to, will I be an independent filmmaker and produce these with my own people and things, or am I going to look more towards trying to have more of an individual career as a director, and then just work more with like production services companies or people that are hired on the outside? Is that the case? Are you looking to be more as a writer director, or are you thinking, no, I want to get budgets and effectively be a producer, writer, director?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Well, I suppose on the next one, it will be a case of whatever I have to do to get it made. Once again, I'll end up back in that situation, and maybe on the third, I don't know. But to me, it kind of feels like I don't know. Do you write and direct, or is it Sarah does? Sarah does the majority of the writing, isn't it?
Yeah, with Hex, I mean, like, to be fair, my main job is as a producer. I raise finance for films. I'm like, I guess I would say my closest, well, yeah, if I'm being kind to myself, it would be Roger Corman. He's a patron of Hex as well.
Oh, cool, great.
And that came about because of the way that our ideologies had a lot in common. So I love to direct. It is a passion of mine, but producing films and making sure they're getting made is like and then having a small horror studio is important. But like in terms of the writing, as a producer, I'll normally develop ideas for concepts, or look for old stories and things, and sometimes I'll write little treatments and things. But me and Sarah will be collaborating early on though. It'll be like, hey, this is a great story from like maybe like a news story from like of some event that happened in the middle of the 19th century, or maybe creepy or something. I'll be like, I think this could be cool. And it just, as a producer, it comes to me very quickly, ideas of like, it could be done like this. That's all fine, but it would count for nothing without the skill of a great writer who's a great dramatist and can write dialogue and understand characters and emotional nuances. So, for example, like, although I've written scripts and I do like writing, I'm one, not nearly as good as Sarah, but two, it's just that for me personally, the struggle is expressing the different psychological perspectives of the characters, not speaking in the one voice of the writer. So Sarah will write the scripts, for that, and then we'll just collaborate again on revisions and stuff. Normally in production, as a producer, I'll be kind of like, can we add more to the third act? We need. What about the nude riot scene? That makes every film finale exciting. Quick, nude riot scene, fire everywhere. Say no. That's when me and Sarah have those producer-writer conversations.
Well, because like what you're saying there, like, it's because I kind of feel like if you can write and direct, then obviously you have a bit more of a sort of singular vision, and it has like a plus and a minus to it, obviously. But I've always kind of liked that, like people like Nicholas Winding Refn, who did Drive, Only God Forgives, Neon Demon. He did those films. It's sort of like an expression. I suppose it goes back again to saying that. So I probably only work for. I think maybe the way I see it is that I'd write for other people using what I know now about writing. But I think when it comes round to directing, I just can't get away from the visions that I have in my head, that I couldn't just be for service for hire that way. So it would be.
I think that's perfectly reasonable, though. I mean, like if, for example, if you feel deep inside that you're not just a storyteller, you're a story creator.
Yeah.
Then that's fair enough. That can't be changed. That's who you are, and that's why your stories will be unique, and the way you tell them will be unique. To be honest, like I would struggle if I'm happy enough with the input that I have for the story to get that satisfaction, that sense of contributing to the authorship that makes it feel like I can direct the film with the sense of what the story is.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I very much appreciate that. And one of the biggest challenges filmmakers have is when they're on one hand fortunate enough to get presented with a budget, but on the other hand, they don't have executive control of the script, and they're told, effectively to make it this way and that way and stuff like that. I would find that a hard thing to sacrifice 12 to 18 months of my life for.
Yeah, I agree. And on the other side of that as well is that I feel that when you make mistakes in film and you can't address it and it has to go out with those mistakes, the way I see it, like, they should be my mistakes. They should be for me. Because when you direct something, you have to own it. Like, there's no way that you can't own it because your name's on it. So if anybody's going to fuck up on the film, and if you're just not say just, but if you're a director for hire, then you could just be a mirror image of the producer's concept of what they want to see. But that might be a really bad call. But it's going to be on your neck when it goes out. People are going to say it's you who did it. And yet, when you made the mistakes, you own it, right? They're your mistakes. So at least or if it's a vision and not everyone gets it, but you love it, then I think that's brilliant. I feel more comfortable in that space than I would do just being a workhorse for somebody else and just presenting their vision for them. But I could write for somebody else. That's not an issue there.
Yeah, I feel that way as well, and certainly Sarah does, because there's something sacred in the writing. Interestingly, and this might be a disappointing perspective for younger filmmakers aspiring for careers as directors, but I feel the game's changing a lot in that field. So before I started Hex, I was working as a freelance producer at different kind of budget levels, but not in the independent sense either. For example, like I was a producer for a film called Kids versus Monsters. It was a $9 million film shot in LA, but it wasn't like pitching one of my own ideas and raising the money. It was packaging a product for Nickelodeon and things like that. And and so you're like a cog. Do you know what I mean? And so the mechanisms of finance work because they know what the product will be like, and of course they'll only finance it based on what it's going to be like and what the package is like. And it's not coming to my company per se, although we're a co-production partner for that film. But it's, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's like being an executive like at Disney. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, just made the film for like $100 million, but like it doesn't matter because it's not real. So,
I know.
But anyway, but here's the caveat about the directors though. So indie filmmakers that think, right, I want to have a career as a director, face an uphill struggle at the moment, because directors, and at least from my experience from the producing side, they are becoming a rapidly devalued commodity. That and it's unfortunate. I don't think that's the case in independent film and in lower budget commercial film, but certainly when you come to medium to high budget, they're more likely to look for a very popular trending social media influencer to give them their first break. The amount of like named actors or influencers that are kind of magically making a debut feature that just happens to look slick as fuck that is playing the Sundance selection. Like, do you mean, or whatever? Yeah. That's what you're up against now. And I know because I was at the same meetings that would look at social media engagement as a calculated determinator for who should get the directing gig, because they're going to get told what to do anyway. You're going to hire an AD and a production manager that are like Vietnam War veterans with like so much film experience between them. This director, inverted commas, is going to swan about and say they want things to be more blue or pink and then sit in their trailer and get paid for their tweets. Like, this is...
It's a different thing, isn't it, as well, that side of the art.
And that's rapidly becoming more and more of what the industry is for film at a certain budget level. So for directors, for folks that dream of a career as a director in which they're being hired and then will work for companies that will be supposedly paying $7-figure budgets and whatnot, they're becoming obsolete. They don't want someone that thinks independently. Why? Why would they? when they can get someone that is part of the social media system, that is already a name, that will do what they're told. And to be honest, like, actors are impressionable, sensitive, perfect vehicles for being fed bullshit and told what to do and then getting off on it. And just, it's like, sorry, actors. I'm just saying what the producer perspective is, not necessarily my
yeah, of course.
and when I say producer perspective, I mean studio executive perspective. And that's the problem. The more intelligent you are, the less likely you're going to be hired, versus the person who is the least intelligent but has the most trending popularity among fans on social media, be that a named actor or an influencer. And it's going way more in that direction now. So that's maybe not necessarily the case in lower budget film, but I know so many directors who are established, like with reputations I would dream of having if I was a director, who are struggling to get decent wages together and are up against, 23-year-old influencers with millions of fans, despite, having like sometimes like even like Oscar nominations 30 years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's like, nah.
Do you think, are those people writer directors that you?
Some of them are, but they have stronger resistance compared to those that don't, though. Because they have their aesthetic and their style, but they're also the kind of folks that have moved further to try and set up their own production companies now. They're the ones that could kind of see or sense the wind changing first,
it's I think it's probably, I mean, I've only obviously, like yourself, been doing what I'm doing, like you've said, for possibly 10 years. But it's always seemed quite historically quite a difficult medium to get involved into. And obviously things like in Hollywood, which I don't know if you've read Charlie Chaplin's autobiography, but it's amazing. And just to think of that chap out there, Charlie Chaplin, he was like in LA at the time when people were driving around throwing stones at the new gas lamps that were put in, and that he started United Artists because there was nobody to represent artists, because they were all being used and hired by studios and kept in the studio system, making all the money for the studios, but they weren't making much themselves at the time. So he started that whole thing. But it was still historically hard for people. So where it was really hard for people to go and get involved in film in the regard of if you wanted to be a director, obviously just the cost of film stock, all these different factors that came into it. And then the digital thing came in. And with the digital thing also obviously came in the social media thing. So you've got these sort of plays going off of sort of power struggles. It seems like they're power struggles that are going on, because you've got people who are great artists, but they don't give a toss about social media or being involved with social media. And I think I've seen that from the outside, where some people seem to have been squashed down by that system, because it's kind of like expected that you should be that popular face. But actually their work is amazing. Their work can speak for itself. But
I actually think it will eventually probably lead to like almost like a kind of shadow industry. You'll have this kind of like version of a film industry driven by independent filmmakers that are almost self-sustainable with audiences, digital platforms, combined with like traditional distribution, but the returns are limited on that, but it'll help. Versus commercial films that are basically hiring tastemakers for the directors instead of artists. Totally. But hey, if it lets us finance our films and keep on trucking, then. But of course, this is where social media is the one game changer that would probably keep Adam Curtis awake at night.
Oh man, Adam Curtis's documentaries, what they inadvertently stumbled upon.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I love those documentaries, but I think one thing I will say is that what was I going to say? As you were saying that, something just sprung into my mind. No, it's totally gone. It's gone. There was something I was going to say. Oh yeah. So if you look at like the Marvel movies, which to be honest with you, I don't dip into the Marvel movies, but what you have seen, and you've also seen it in things like James Bond, is that you've seen the fact that studios have understood that audiences, like in a good book, want to connect to a character. They want to connect emotionally to characters. This is why I think that's why so much great independent cinema does so well as well, and it still thrives. It's because it's still a voice. It still has that. And I think traditionally we've seen a little bit of that. We've seen that stripped away in those bigger movies, but they've had to sort of pull it back and come back. They gave Daniel Craig a whole backstory, you know, like, because audiences want to connect to people. This is the point, you know? And I think that that is key in this. And I think it's key for independent cinema to carry on doing that, is that that's why people talk about films. It's not just about the explosions. Yeah, the explosions are great, or the big set pieces, but ultimately it's about the characters and the fact that you are behind the character within it, and you want them to win, or maybe you want them to lose, I don't know, but you are behind them and you're invested in that. And I think that's key. I think that's gold in independent cinema. And I think that you see a lot of that with those unique voices, people's work that comes out, where you can really it can be like brilliant, like brutal horrors or all these different things. But the really clever ones make sure that the audience gives a damn about the main character in it. And as soon as you've got that, I think you've got gold in that part of that, you know. And I think that's key to longevity as well, as a writer, especially as a writer in that.
No, fair enough. Yeah, no, and I agree as well. Well, Raine, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Hex Talks. And folks, you can all watch The Village in the Woods on all major digital platforms. And it's available physically, I think, as well, isn't it? In the UK?
It's DVD in the UK. US is DVD. I think the only place to do Blu-ray currently will be Germany, August 27th.
Cool. Yeah. No,
it's getting a Blu-ray release there. Yeah.
Cool. So folks, there'll be a link in the description as well for a UK and US product link as well. Thank you so much, Raine, and I wish you the absolute best of luck on your next project.
Yeah, you too. Dragon Knight.
Hey. Thanks so much, Raine. I shall now bid you adieu.
Take care.
Be sure to hit subscribe and the bell notification icon so you don't miss any of our future videos. Also, if you would like to support our channel and help us make more content, then check out the Patreon link in the video description below. Thank you and goodbye.